Welcome everyone to the second episode of the Adeptus Ridiculous. My name is DK Diamantes. I know basically nothing about Warhammer lore. I know bits and pieces. I know that the Emperor is a corpse emperor. I know that Magnus did nothing wrong, but aside from that, I'm going to need a lot of help from lifelong fan Bricky. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at @adridiculous, and be sure to check out the website adeptusridiculous.com to stay in tune when we go live and when these get uploaded. Bricky, you told me this was one of the most important events in Warhammer. Initially, I thought that you were going to be talking to me about the Horus Heresy, because that's all anyone ever talks about when they're like, oh dude, when you get into Warhammer, you need to start with the Horus Heresy. That's it. Do that. What's the most important event that is not the Horus Heresy?
Well, I'd argue that. Also, hi, I'm Bricky. DK, you didn't shoot out your socials. Don't you want to be like, I'm DK on DK this, that, and the other thing? Because I'm Bricky on pretty much every social media platform there is.
Listen, man, I did the intro. I'll shill later. It's fine.
All right, I like shilling.
I'm stoked about this important event.
I do wonder, at what point do you have to say that you no longer know nothing about Warhammer? Like, how many episodes in do we have to reach before we're like, I know a little bit about Warhammer now?
I feel like there is so much Warhammer stuff out there that it's gonna take like 100 episodes before I'm like, yeah, I kind of know a little bit.
There's a lot. There's a lot. But this topic, yes, a lot of people do think that the Horus Heresy is #1 a big bad event, and it probably is the one you should look at if you're very new right into the whole universe. However, to say that it's the most important event in the universe would probably be wrong. Today, we are talking about the Necrons and the Necron tier, and the war in heaven most primarily, and a little bit of our big bad boy called the Silent King, because he's a very important character and one of my favorites, and I do want to get on him a little bit after we discuss the Necrons themselves, because while a lot of people see the Necrons as just one of the many Xenos races, like the Tyranids or the Eldar, they are probably one of, if not the most important race in the entire universe.
Oh. So I remember last episode, you said you wanted to talk about the Silent King, and I was like, man, I know the Silent King is a Necron, so surely we got to get a little backstory on the Necrons, what they are, because the only thing I know about the Silent King is, I said this last time, but he rides a throne and it's powered by like an old god or something.
Yep, he rides a pimp throne and he's got an enslaved god as a battery. It is fantastic. Actually, I do have a little excerpt from the codex in which I'm currently holding that I did want to read at one point, but we can get into that a little bit later because there is a lot to cover in this particular part of the Warhammer universe. I'm curious when I should get going because this is like me opening up like a 300-page novel.
Oh boy, that's that's a long history of the Necrons.
It's a lot. They have a lot going on. And the Necron tier. We're talking about the Necron tier.
Oh.
Imagine Necron with a TYR at the end. Necron tier.
Oh, I thought we were talking like a tier list, like TIER, there's tiers of Necrons. I was like, that's what TYR.
That's genius. I want to get a Trays in the Infinite man spreading tier list. The top 20 Trays in the Infinite man spread photoshops.
Tier list.
This is genius. Shy, get on this.
Yeah, tweet that out immediately. Post haste as soon as this goes up. We need to get a tier list.
Oh my god. Okay.
But I'm excited about this because like as far as minis go, with the few that I've painted, I know that like Necrons are so popular and they're so cool, and I'm stoked to finally learn about them and why everybody loves them so much.
Yeah, I mean, they recently got a huge update, which is why they're very popular right now. They got a brand new codex just a few months ago. They got a whole bunch of new models. They kind of had the Sisters treatment where they got a nice big range refresh. And especially now, they're kind of the main villains of this new chapter of the lore. That in the Pariah Nexus and all, the Indomitus Crusade is a big part of it. So they're kind of like the new main baddie in this current era of Warhammer. So With that being said, I think it is good to know exactly kind of where they came from. And so you can kind of have a little bit more of a conscious idea of what exactly happened to both their race. Why are they robots? Why are they robot skeletons? And what's like, why do they have this Egyptian? Well, there's no real reason for the Egyptian theme besides GW thought it would look cool. But it's why all those things.
It's the only reason you need is it looks cool.
I mean, it does look really cool. It's a whole bunch of, it's undead Egyptian robot skeletons. It's fantastic. And actually, before we do get into it, I do want to mention some of the old Necron lore. GW has this thing where they have lore for lots of different races, but it's always the lore as written by X or Y other faction. So a lot of the times they can say the records were incorrect. It's actually this if they wanted to retcon something. Right. Back in the day, the Necrons were basically just Terminator ripoffs. So much so that their special ability to come back from life, known as reanimation protocols, was called "Will Be Back."
Wow.
It was super on the nose.
I mean, that is very on the nose. That's like Tau level on the nose.
It is seriously obvious. And at the time, they were just unthinking, unfeeling robots that wanted to kill all life. And that was kind of their lore. They don't know where they came from. They don't know what's going on. It was just, yeah, they want to kill everything. But now they've been fleshed out. Now they have different kinds of dynasties, similar to how Space Marines have chapters. And they have a whole thing. So, way back in the day, the Necron tier were a race of flesh and blood. Millions of years ago, about 60 million years ago, maybe even longer. So way back when, Necron tier's life was ass. They had super cancer. Basically what happened
Jesus.
was that they lived on a horrible, horrible planet in which a star constantly blasted their bodies with radiation, and they lived short, brittle, painful lives of radiation sickness. And you know, have you ever seen Chernobyl, the TV show? Like, you know how bad radiation sickness is.
Oh yeah, it's no good. That's
no, it's absolutely horrible way to die. And
that's
so that was their life, was short, like 20 to 40 year lifespans, give or take, or at least assumed, because of just how terrible living on this planet was. And to the point where creating like tombs and stuff just for the dead to only occasionally house the living was how they lived. And so for a while, there was another race around there. And that race was called the Old Ones, which was what the Eldar called them. And the Old Ones were these kind of like reptile things. If you played any StarCraft, they're like the Xel'Naga, or if you played any Halo, they're like the Forerunners, I suppose.
Okay.
Big, extremely advanced beings with a huge knowledge of space travel and astronomy.
Yeah, it's astronomy. Yeah. Astrology's kind of like Aquarius, and
they were Geminis.
Mercury in retrograde, and
they were a bunch of Cancers. At least the Necrons here were. So the Old Ones, they were practically like nigh immortal. They were living the best lives that they could, and the Necrons, or the Necron tier, ended up going out and finding these Old Ones because they eventually developed space travel to get away from their horrible planet. But
why wouldn't you? I mean, Jesus, sounds like, worse than the Krieg planet we were talking about last time.
Yes, Krieg planet was terrible.
Yeah, this sounds worse. Like 20 years, and you just like, and it's like, God, how do they even come up with space travel? You only live 20 years. How do you? Jesus.
Very slowly, very slowly. So their space travel was very similar to how our space travel would be in modern day. They would have to go into like stasis pods and then take like fucking forever to reach a new area.
Gotcha.
As for that, they eventually came into contact with said Old Ones, and the Old Ones were living, their best lives, and the Necrons were like, damn, Old Ones, you guys should teach us how to live that life and how to be immortal. And the Old Ones were like, piss off. So naturally, you have this horribly terrible radiation-stricken Necron tier race looking at these almost godlike beings, and then this just festered this hatred, this deep, dark hatred of these old ones. And so these Necrons, with their short lifespans, tended to fight each other because all the different, like, they like dynasties. They tended to kind of fight each other a little bit. So eventually, after enough quarrels, they came together under one flag and went out to them and they said, "Fuck you, old ones," and they started a war with them. Can you? I'll give you another ABC thing.
Oh boy.
A, they won. B, they lost. C, both of them died.
I can't imagine them winning. I mean, they're this weak race of super cancer-inflicted beings, and you're gonna go up against a bunch of immortals living their best life that are super advanced. There's no way they win. They lose. B.
They absolutely get bodied. So much so that they are shoved into that same corner of the galaxy with their horrible super cancer sun, and they are basically trapped there, and the old ones consider them no more than a slight nuisance.
Oof,
and so they lose
sounds
hard.
about right.
Now, the Necron tier discovered a different race. So way back when the galaxy was first formed, essence of creation, created the warp, just like the dawn of life, right? There were these other beings known as the Catan. And the Catan are these star gods. They're basically beings of non-energy, so to speak, but they kind of consume energy from stars. They're not really like visible. They're kind of in between. They're not like, they don't necessarily live in the warp, but they're kind of this weird like in between. It's like an invisible force. Imagine like an alien that you can only see in like infrared or something like that.
Oh,
kind of weird. So these Catan in particular were just kind of chilling around, and eventually the Necrons discovered these Catan. And naturally, after this horrible war with the old ones and how they got absolutely dumpstered, they kind of wanted to find a way to commune with these Catan. Now, no one really knows how they were able to do it, but their main theory was the concept that since the Catan were these kind of immaterial gods, they needed a physical material shell. So what they did was they created out of that kind of living metal, they have this thing called living metal, it's kind of like metal that regrows itself, and they created these like statues and these sort of deities of said metal, and these deities had said Catan kind of like take over the statue. So it's almost like the essence of the star god entered the statue and gave them a physical form. And so now these star gods had their own, I wouldn't say flesh and blood, but they had this like necrodermis of a body, and they could commune with the Necrons. Naturally, the Catan wanted to get the most they could out of the Necron tier. The Necron tier naturally wanted to form an alliance with these star gods. So there are a main thing called the Triarch. The Triarch is the real full-on leadership of the Necrons. And the Triarch, as the name sounds, Tri is made of 3 people. 2 of these lower tier pharaons. And because the Necrons kind of had a nobility system, they had like lords and overlords, and they had like a royal court and stuff like that. And then the final one was the Silent King. Now, this guy was known as the Silent King because he wouldn't actually address the populace himself. He would address them through the other 2 parts of the Triarch, the other 2 pharaons. And if you actually look at the Silent King's model, he's got these like 2 little dudes next to him, and that's the other 2 guys, the current model. And so what happened was that the Catan, now in their new physical bodies, normally they hunger for stars, right? But now they hunger for, their hunger for like more of the material realm, a satiation of this kind of like this new gluttonous feeling where they really want to consume either like different materials or particularly souls, the souls of people.
Okay.
So what happened is there was a Catan known as the Deceiver. Now, he's not the nicest of guys.
Really? His name's the Deceiver, and he's not a nice guy?
No, not a whole lot.
Wow.
So what happened was that the Deceiver came up to the Silent King. The Silent King's name is Zarek, by the way. And then he went to Zarek and he petitioned him. And he said the Catan, way back when, had a war with the old ones as well. And they lost the war. And the Catan are super bitter about this, just like the Necrons hate the old ones. And because of this, they had a burning passion of vengeance against those terrible old ones. So they said this, go ahead and align with us, and your entire population will become unified under one dynasty again, and together they will drive the old ones away using their newfound material power. Because now these Catan, now that they have a material body, they are insanely powerful. They can unravel the fabric of reality. They can create black holes. They're incredibly frightening.
I didn't realize how much extra strumph they got from these, like, because I thought it was just like, oh yeah, now they can, like, they're visible, they can commune with you, they can commune. I didn't realize that they got, like, Omega level more powerful. I was sitting here like, why the hell would two losers suddenly stand a chance against this group that annihilated both of them? Like, but yeah, if these new bodies gave them that much power, I can see how that would. Yeah, I don't see this ending well for the Necron tier.
We'll see very soon.
Yeah.
So basically, what the Catan also offered was something far more prized. It was the promise of full immortality to the Necron tier. The thing that they most wanted, to get rid of their radiation-stricken bodies and to finally fully be actually immortal. And
that's okay.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Still a little worried about this guy called the Deceiver.
Yeah,
I feel like this is gonna be one of those monkey paw closes things.
You know, you got a good head on your shoulders, DK, because that's exactly what happened. So the Silent King, in a wayward amount of ambition, eventually went and talked to his royal court and his pharaohs, and he asked, hey, what should we do? Like, is this a good idea? Is this a good idea to ally? And it took him actually a full year. A man named Orikin the Diviner, who was the court astrologer, was the only person who said no. He said that it would bring them into a renaissance of glory, but forever destroy his people. But he's the only one who disagreed. Orikin is also a guy who messes with the time a lot, so it's probably a good idea to believe him. But alas, they did not. And eventually the Silent King, in his own need of ambition and his own want to get back at the old ones, he signed the contract with the Catan. And thus, the Necron tier immediately were dragged into damnation as gigantic furnaces were created for them. And dragged in chains, the entire populace was brought into these furnaces into something called biotransference, in which their flesh and bone were ripped apart and replaced with fully metal bodies. However, unfortunately, they also lost something else: their free will and their souls. And the Catan got fat. They got fucking fat on the souls of the Necrons. They chilled there as like millions of people strutted directly into biotransference, and they ate all of the Necron tier souls. You know that demons and shit don't really care about the Necrons because they don't have souls and they don't have a presence in the warp. Necrons are a soulless robot race, and most of them, with the exception of the high up nobility, the overlords, the lords, the Silent King, are mindless, brainless automatons that simply follow the command protocols and the software writing that have been placed into their brain, that are at the will of the Silent King and the overlords themselves. They're a soulless automatons now, and they have no souls of any kind.
Like, okay, I knew they were probably gonna get the raw end of this deal. I knew they probably weren't gonna be super happy with this deal. I didn't realize we were talking about consume the soul, become a lifeless drone. Jesus, like getting hauled off into a furnace and getting your soul eaten. Although I guess as soon as you said, like, oh boy, these guys really want to consume souls and they're hungry, I guess the writing should have been on the wall for what this deal entails.
Well, you know, he is called a deceiver for a reason, but he was a very hungry man. They were all very hungry. Though that is, and so naturally, no longer the Necron tier. They are now the Necrons, and their new robot bodies. It's pretty kind of interesting because when you look at the tabletop, a Necron Warrior, your basic troop, was technically like a civilian. He was just a guy who got dragged into the biotransference and now has been told to wield a gun and has programming chips in his brain. Well, his lack of brain.
Yeah,
it's kind of fucked. The Silent King, however, he got like top tier. He got fucking Gucci shit. All right, he has a Supreme sticker slapped to the side of his goddamn rig. His stuff
sideways
is
hat
like
and everything. Yeah.
a whole thing, snapback, hype beast shit. All right, he looks like fucking like Jake Paul. All right, he's got merchandising all over it. All right, it's like like the NASCAR drivers, they just wear advertisements.
Oh yeah, there's just their whole outfit is just stickers of advertisers. Yep.
He looks like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights. It's perfect. No, but his body is actually kind of cool. He's not like a Magnus-sized dude. He's just kind of a bigger Necron. He's like a foot to 2 feet taller. And however, his actual body is super advanced. He's very, very impressive. It's like perfect artifice. His memory is very, very good. His mind is clean. But he has this feeling of hollowness in him. And that is because he has no soul anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's nothing in there.
So what happened now, as he kept his mind, like a lot of the nobles did as well. But he literally got to sit there and watch his entire people, because of his like go-getter nature to want to get all of his guys to get all set up and get on the old ones. He gets to sit there and watch his entire race get consumed by these Catan.
Oh, man. And he's got a super good memory, so no forgetting that picture.
Not at all. So with that, and with the Catan just like fucking fat, chonky fucking boys, they are super powerful now. And so they went to the old ones and they wrecked space. They supernovaed stars. They sent black holes to kill systems. They unraveled the reality of time and space itself. You know, they would take like a ship and they would like duplicate the ship from 5 seconds ago. So the ship would like overlap in multiple areas of said ship and just implode on itself.
Whoa.
Jesus. They were super fucking strong. It was insane.
Jesus Christ.
So, and then this was known as the War in Heaven. This was centuries, millennia longer of a war where the Catan took all the Necrons as their new slaves. And they used all the Necrons' powers to just go and just body the old ones. like, oh my God. It was constant. Planets were like razed, completely turned to ash. Like it was disgusting.
I mean, I guess it's literally a war between like gods or god tier like things, right?
Pretty much, it's a war between gods, their robot slaves, against basically gods. It's pretty ridiculous. Now, good old ones. This as a race were psychers. You know what psyker is, right?
Yeah. They have psychic powers. They're pseudo
wizards.
Jedi, sure.
So they as well, because the old ones were actually not that bad of people. They were kind of raising up other races and kind of teaching them psychic powers to kind of be like, hey, they like to foster life. They believe life is precious, you know? And so they were able to kind of get some new people kind of growing up there, some more psychic people around the world. And one of these were the Eldar. You know the Eldar, the space elves.
Yeah.
Also, the orcs were one of them as well.
Oh, really?
Back in the day, they were known as the Krorks. They were way scarier and way stronger and intelligent. The reason they're not any
that's got to be a different episode, right? Because they're already real scary and they're already really fucked up. You're telling me they were more scary?
The Krorks were far more powerful and far smarter and stronger. The problem is that eventually, after like millions of years of just infighting, they eventually became stupid. But if you've ever
Fair.
wondered why orcs have like a psychic power, their power of belief, it's probably that because they got it because the old ones gave them like the psychic ability, or helped raise them that ability.
That makes sense. Okay, I'm learning.
It's coming together,
guys.
right?
It's coming together. The pieces are fitting in.
That being, I will say, I have a feeling that there's going to be a couple like actually people that will watch this. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best, man. There's a lot going on here, but I think I'm on point so far. I think I'm doing okay. I might have got a couple stuff slightly wrong, but so far I feel like I'm solid. As time continues and as the giant war began to rage, the old ones had the Webway. Are you familiar with the Webway? Did we talk about the Webway last time?
I don't think we did.
Okay.
I've heard the Webway used before, but never really explained.
Okay, so the Webway, FTL travel involves going into the warp and coming out of the warp, which is why it's super dangerous. The Webway is like taking a really nice back alley with a guard. It's way, way safer and much easier to work with. And that's kind of how the old ones were able to live for so long, is they were able to kind of outmaneuver using this Webway and just basically cross into different areas of the galaxy in like a blink of an eye. It's super handy, but eventually the Necrons found it and they entered it and they started murdering more and killing off more. And this actually leads into probably one of the more important stuff and something that was a little bit contentious before, which was actually the creation of chaos. So the warp and the immaterium was always there, right? It was always a thing. But eventually, due to the insane amount of psychic prowess the old ones not only had, but gave to other people, those subservient races were sent to like, bro, we're dying. We're dying. Go kill him. Get the Catan. Get the Stark, please. Stop him. It didn't stop him. The Catan fucking murdered them. And this just vast amount of psychic energy being just extinguished and raised, and all this pain and death. There were little parts of chaos in the warp, because the warp is like everything, right? It's your emotion, it's your belief, it's your mind, your soul. There is a realm in the warp known as the realm of chaos. It's a part of the warp. And because of that, because of this vast amount of pain and suffering, that realm just bloated. It became so much larger and more powerful. At least three of them. The realm of Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. For rot, trickery, and war, right? And so,
sense.
So when a lot of people think of chaos, they think of just the warp in general, when in reality, it was only at some part, a very tiny part of the warp. But because of the war in heaven, that's why the warp is so related with chaos, because they've taken over such a giant majority of it. And that's why chaos is so frightening and so prevalent.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess a millennia-long war between gods will do that, won't it?
Well, not only that, but like Geneva's suggestion, man. They genocided like hundreds of species. And then they ate their souls.
That's fair. Why wouldn't they? I mean, this is gonna make them stronger. Food. Sure. Yeah, I'm still hungry.
So after enough time, and after all this kind of went and it came and went, the old ones either fled the Milky Way or were completely extinguished. There's a good chance that they were generally completely obliterated and genocided. So old ones do not remain. They are gone. And with that, the Necrons and the Catan were just, mainly the Catan, were just so fat on all the souls they just ate. And after long, very hard-fought victory, they kind of started to, kind of fight each other a little bit, because naturally the winners with the apex predators kind of beat each other a tad. Sure. But during this whole time, Zarek was just kind of sitting there, like biding his time, kind of petting his James Bond cat, and he was just waiting. And finally, at the last stage of the old one's defeat, he took his entire Necron army and led a huge revolt against the Catan. And that is the biggest part, was the Silent King's betrayal. So he, with the command of his Necron forces, wielded the exact same energies and destructive power that the Catan themselves wielded. and immediately revolted against their gods. And it was a bloody war. It was a really bloody war. But the main question is, well, DK, how do you kill a god?
I'm not exactly sure, other than like some mystical god-killing weapon, or they take away their bodies, or they do some reprogramming shit. How do indeed you fight a god? I mean, it's Warhammer, so of course you're going to be able to kill a god because duh. But I don't know how you turn on a god.
So that's the best part, is that you don't kill a god. This is the one time Warhammer had an ounce of subtlety, and then they completely botch it immediately afterwards. So you can't kill a god. But what you can do is you can damage them to such an extent that they shatter. Their own psyche and essence shatters into thousands of tiny little fragments. And those fragments, they then enslaved. They took all of those fragments and they put them in giant vaults and enslaved them and kept them in basically eternal stasis chambers. So in the lore and in the tabletop, whenever you field a Catan, because you can actually use Catan in gameplay, they're actual models you can run. And if you look at their actual names, they're not called just the Catan. They're called Catan Shard of the Nightbringer, of the Void Dragon, even of the Deceiver. You can actually field the Deceiver in game.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and they're really, really strong. But that's being said, these are some of the most powerful units in the entire codex, and they are one of the thousands of shards that you can actually field in game. So they've literally blasted gods into pieces and pokeballed them, and now they use them in their battles because they can. And they power his throne. His throne is one of the shards.
It's crazy because like we were talking about it and I was like, oh yeah, I know that there's a god that powers his throne. I thought that was gonna be like one of the old ones that they just like, haha, old one, we got you. Now you're gonna just power my throne because we got you. Revenge succeeded. Monument. Oh god, I didn't realize it was one of the Catan.
Yeah, there's a ton of ways you can field the Catan, but actually, humorously enough, when the Silent King dies in the tabletop, there is a particular special rule called Vengeance of the Unchained, where the god breaks free and it does like a giant explosion. It's pretty great. So
in the tabletop, would you want the Silent King to die like surrounded by a bunch of units?
Bunch of enemies?
Like, could you just kamikaze the Silent King into like...
DK, you're learning how to play Warhammer. I'm proud of you. That is correct. So the Silent King fucks in melee and shooting, but it's pretty good to head him up because there's actually a special ability you can spend points for to make him automatically explode. And yes, it's very good. I think it's called Vengeance of the Pharaon. And yeah, it's Necrons have pretty good naming sequences as well. They have pretty badass names.
I like it. I like it a lot. I'm liking these Necron more and more. The more I hear, the more I'm getting behind them. Mm-hmm.
So, with this revolt, they shattered them into shards, and they're pretty reeling from this war, though. And with that, the Silent King realized the Necron's life. He looks at his entire people, right? He looks at these soulless automatons of his whole race that he basically doomed, and he realizes the time of the Necron is over. Zarek realized that soon the Eldar would inherit the mantle of the galaxy, right? It's their time next. But he realized that soon, like the old ones, their time will also fall. And eventually it will take a while, but eventually them and the orcs will come and then they will go. And he will be there for when they go. So that began the Great Sleep. All the Necrons went into these colossal tomb worlds and they all went to rest, to bide their time and wait for the passing of the millennia. Except for him. He did not go to bed. He stayed awake. And he chose to go out into the intergalactic void between galaxies and stay there in order to have a bit of penance for what he had done. So with that much like pain for consigning his race into oblivion, he stayed awake over in the dark reaches between galaxies for 60 million years. He stayed awake. He did not go to bed. 60 million years he sat there in penance for what he had done.
Jesus Christ. 60 million years.
And this is the part where I wanted to read that one thing.
Okay.
Because I really like this part of the codex. It's one of my favorite bits of lore. Because the codex has a lot of lore. And this one in particular, I think, is really, really interesting. Here it is.
Man, my internet goes out for 15 minutes, and I'm like, this is hell! And he's sitting there for 60 million years in darkness. Jesus.
All right. This might take me like 3 or 4 minutes to read, but I'm going to do it, all right? This is story time with Bricky.
Rock on, Bricky.
Few beings in the galaxy possess the might, wisdom, and sweeping visions of Zarek, last of the Silent Kings. During the nightmarish transition of biotransference, it was Zarek who emerged with the most powerful and advanced of all the bodies gifted to the newly fashioned Necron race. His neurological and sensory architecture, while wholly synthetic, is more advanced and precise than anything flesh and blood could emulate. His powerful android form is mechanical perfection on a level that no sentient being now alive could replicate. Smooth and graceful in its every motion, irresistible in its strength, and regal and intimidating in its magnificent presence. Neither mental nor physical ailments can ever afflict the Silent King. His mind remains more wholly his own than any amongst his people. Forever he was their ruler, and did not endure the perils of the Great Sleep or subsequent revivification that have driven so many Necrons mad. That was actually a part of it, is that during the Great Sleep, a lot of their minds and shit got fucked up, and so they woke up, they're even more like mentally damaged, and their bodies are more like fragile and kind of fucked up.
Oh God.
For all of this, Zarek suffers, as he has suffered ever since he realized the purgatory to which he consigned his people. Millennia have heaped upon millennia, and still the Silent King's guilt remains as jagged and bitter within him as once it was. His sorrow and horror have been preserved by his mechanized mind as perfectly as has every single memory, thought, and feeling Zarek has experienced since the day of his biotransference. It can be said with certainty that such an impossible burden as this would have driven even the most resilient of living beings to madness and self-destruction eons ago. Zarek, though, is not truly living, and his torments have not destroyed him. Instead, they have honed him into a being of horrifying and singular determination. The Silent King has a plan for his people and for the galaxy, and he knows that he is righteous with his inescapable, unwavering certainty of a god of a machine. Zarek's will is a star erupting in supernova, a comet colliding with a doomed world. He is as inevitable as time and tide. The Silent King seeks nothing less than final atonement for the fate to which he consigned his race, and none shall be permitted to stand in his way. He is like one of my favorite characters in the whole lore. I fucking love this dude.
That is a hell of a, like, that is... I mean,
GW's got good writing. Their writing isn't bad.
Do. I only use this word when I really mean it. That's epic, dude. Like, that's an
epic gamer moment, man. That's badass.
That's an epic gamer moment. That's a pog right there, dude.
Oh, no. Shy, cut it, please.
If you're gonna go epic gamer moment on me,
she told me we're fired.
Damn it, we only got one episode.
Damn it. But anyway, dude, I was reading that, and I was like, that man has a perfect recollection of 60 million years of memory. Bro, if I had a perfect recollection of the shit I texted girls when I was 14, bro, I would have ended it a while ago, man. No fucking way. Fuck that shit. This machine is more of a man than I'll ever be.
Oh, absolutely. I think we all are like, man, if I could remember everything I've ever done and every mistake I've ever made,
no freaking way.
Nope, I am I am signing off. Goodbye. God, but that's that.
Ooh.
Boy, the Silent King is a boss, though.
He is such a boss. That's basically the lore of the Necrons. They have now finally reawoken from their great sleep because the Imperium and stuff kind of poked their little tomb worlds, and now they're all rising back up. Some of them really aren't the same. Time is taking its toll. The Necrons themselves are, some of them are even more hollow. Some of their weaponry and stuff, like they can't supernova stars anymore. They don't really have that ability of like unraveling reality besides like a couple of the Catan shards, and even then only to an extent. They're certainly not the people that they originally were. That being said, they're back. The Silent King has returned, not because of them awakening, but because when he was out in deep space, he found the Tyranids. The Tyranids came from a different galaxy, and he saw them passing by, and he was like, "Oh fuck!" And so, ironically, it's actually the real reason. The Silent King's goal is actually to get his people back into flesh bodies again.
That makes sense, sure. Because his memory is like, oh my god, what have I done? I shouldn't have done that. I killed everybody. Everybody's a hollow robot. Yeah, that makes sense as to why he would want to do that.
Yeah, and so to him, he sees that goal, and then he sees the great Tyranid Devourer coming to his planet, and he's like, either I turn them back and I immediately am consumed by the Tyranids, or I'll have no one left to turn back. And so he's quite fearful of the Tyranids. So that's why he's generally like, oh, crap. I gotta be really careful about this. The fact that him and his race that destroyed gods is like, bugs. It's spooky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're serious.
And the Necrons, they generally have this feeling of hatred, and they kind of have like a old man get off my lawn feel to them. They look around and they're like, primitives in my galaxy, like this is mine. How fucking dare you? They look at humans with just like such disgust. They look like at humans as we look like to fucking lizards. They're like, what are you? Or like a rat on your property. Like, yeah, get out of here, shoot. Except the broom they hit them with is like a Gauss cannon.
Oh, that's a hell of a broom.
It's quite interesting.
Now I'm just picturing like a Necron housewife. It's like, shoo, human, shoo, and just Gauss cannoning it. Just a metal Necron with a blonde wig, and like an apron on. Just a Gauss cannon, just shoo, human, shoo, boom.
Oh god, the Necron Karen. Oh dear. But that's the Necrons. It's pretty big, you know. Why chaos is so big. Why the Eldar are a thing, why the Orcs are a thing. Their return, the Silent King in his own right is quite a guy.
Quite a guy indeed. Jeez. Now I know why everyone's such a big fan of the Necrons, and why everybody likes the unit so much, and why they're so hyped up. I mean, aside from like the Imperium, it seems like the next most popular faction has got to be the Necrons. Like, I see everybody painting Necrons, and oh boy, what a fucked up history. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because you don't really get a whole lot of like I don't know, in a universe that's so full of like stalwart people, right? Like if you're in the Imperium, you have to be religiously zealotous. You need to be so devoutful and faithful, or the Mechanicus are, they're insane. But it's kind of nice to have a character that feels guilty. Like,
yeah, he's flawed. I mean, he's in a perfect body, but like he's flawed. He feels guilt. He feels remorse. He's regretful of what he did to his people.
Yeah, it's super cool to have not only a character that has that feeling, but more primarily to have them also not overly bombastic, because the character is a playable character on the tabletop, and he's very expensive points wise, and I guess money wise, but that's just Games Workshop. But comparatively to many of the other characters like Magnus the Red or Mortarium, he's not this gigantic beatstick. He's not just this giant demon Primarch. He's a big Necron with some other dudes, and he's just kind of a big Necron, and it's
he's like
cool.
a big cyborg.
Yeah, but it's cool that he's like a leader. You know, he's not necessarily the guy who runs up there and like headbutts a tank, right? He's just a smart leader, as opposed to being a huge beatstick. And I think it's really cool to have that. You know, it's cool to see the guy being represented as just the leader of the Necron race, not Unga Bunga Migo Smash, you know?
Sounds like an orc episode to me. Unga Bunga Migo Smash. That's what it sounds
I'm very happy for an orc episode the moment we get into that one. A lot of times people consider the Necrons some people consider them being good guys. They're not. They would gladly exterminate all life if they could and leave the galaxy to themselves. And the Silent King is still kind of that way. He actually doesn't want to kill all life. I think he particularly has a little bit of affinity for other kinds of life, but he particularly just doesn't want them all to die. He's more on the lines of like, the problem is that all the other Necrons do want that, and so he's like, like he makes like forced labor camps and shit, which is bad. But to him, it's like, don't kill them all, just have them do our bidding, which is in its own right stupid, because they have like robots that can do anything they want, that don't need to eat, sleep, or anything. But that's kind of like his way of, yeah, don't kill them all, you know. Like, let's be a little more careful.
Yeah, he'd rather have them enslaved than just genocided.
Yeah.
So it's in its own twisted way. I was gonna say it's doing people a favor, but I was like,
yeah. If we compare him to most Warhammer people, he's all right. He's okay. Necrons themselves...
In the Warhammer universe, he's not that bad.
I haven't talked much about the Necrons, like their units or their destroyer cults, or a whole lot of the named characters minus the Silent King. But I think we can definitely set up a second episode or something for that, because learning more about destroyer cults and Old Man Nemesis or Zandrek or something, I think would be really fun for a different episode. But for now, it's a lot to cover, and I most definitely took the short route on a couple of them. But I think I mostly got a solid amount of details on the Necron tier, biotransference, and the Catan. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something.
I know I did. Boy,
it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. I imagine there are going to be a lot of big factions in Warhammer that are probably going to take multiple episodes. But boy, we learned a lot today. I mean, we started out with a race that was, they had a 20-year lifespan, they had super cancer, and they were just totally fucked, tried to fight some old ones, that didn't work out, made living metal bodies, partnered up with other super gods, killed other super gods, their race gets absolutely dunked on. I mean, it's just, it's been a lot. And Warhammer never ceases to amaze me with just how insane it can get.
Absolutely. And this is easily one of the more insane versions. So I'm glad we were able to cover this one early on, because it does set the stage for some other stuff in the future. All right, so thank you very much for watching the second episode of the podcast. Naturally, there's going to be a couple growing pains as time goes on, and a little bit more editing. Has nothing to do with me and sneezing. That's a lie. That's fake news. But if you like to keep watching this, we have plenty of topics to cover. So with that, you can find us both at adeptusridiculous.com. That is a great way to find where we post our podcasts on basically like every podcast site, but that's a very good way to see where you can get it, as well as going to Twitter, which is at ADAdRidiculous as well, if you'd like to see some updates there. I want to congratulate us a little bit for 2,000 downloads for the first episode. Pretty awesome. Really cool. Much better than I expected for the first time. I'm quite excited. And
this has been dope so far. I love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yes, and with that, my name's been Bricky on pretty much all socials, Twitch, YouTube, everything in between. DK?
Yeah, DK Diamantes on pretty much everything. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram. It's all DK Diamantes.
And obviously, shout out to good old Quiet Shy, who is on Quiet Shy basically everywhere as well.
Basically. Well, YouTube, she's quite shallow, but that's okay.
Yeah, quite shallow there. Well, you know, that's just an autobiography.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and we will see you on the next episode.